All right, let's have a quick overview of the project demo that I provided to you in class and also that we built in class. Okay, so just a couple things to think about as you're getting closer to your project being finished. Remember that if you have text that is of a typeface that may or may not be included on a computer that you might want to show your project on, remember to embed the font right there. Okay, embed. Okay, and then you can check what you want in terms of the type of text you want to have. You don't want all. You just really want uppercase and lowercase and numbers and punctuation, and that's it. Because otherwise there's going to be all this other stuff in there and you don't really need it, right? So all we're trying to do is embed what we need and no more than that. Okay, so say okay to that, and then and so that's something you just want to think about there. For text, you're going to want to make sure that it's anti-aliased for readability, because otherwise it may look kind of nasty like that right there, and you don't want to do that. So just make sure everything's anti-aliased. And then in terms of our project, I've got my actions panel here. I've got my code snippets here, and I got my properties. Okay, I got this basically set up for one monitor and a very, very small stage so that I have some room for primarily the code. So down on our timeline, we have a series of layers, and the layers, have text and graphics and so on. And remember that on any given page, objects should be on one layer and another object should be on another layer. Okay, buttons should be on another layer, text should be on another layer. So every element should be on a new layer. So just remember that. Okay, if you start putting multiple elements on one layer, you can cause some trouble. Okay, so we're keeping our project simple. Those are a few overall concepts you want to keep in mind. Okay, so we've got our labels and we've got code. We know that there's code because we have a little letter there, and then we've got a label, and that label is, the name of the page or whatever you want to call it. All right, so the labels are set up 10 frames apart, and we do that so that we can see the name of the label, and that helps us to keep track of what we're doing. On every label, we have a stop action. Okay, that's just good protocol, no matter what. Okay, so then once we have our stop action on every page, then we start thinking about the button actions, right? So a button is what makes the playback head move from place to place, right? So what will happen then is that I'm going to just delete my button code here for a moment, so you remember how this works. We have our button layer, right? There's our button right there. It's selected. And when we want to add code to the button, we go to our code snippets window. Okay. You can find all your windows here. There's code snippets right there. And there's our actions panel here. Okay. So these are some things that you, want to make sure you have. So our button needs to go someplace and it needs to stop. So what we do is we double click on the go to frame and stop snippet. That adds the code to our frame. Okay. But remember, the button's got to be selected for the code to work. If you have something else selected, it's not going to work. Okay. It's got to be a button. And our instruction tells us to replace the number 5 in the code with the frame you want to go to. So this button here, which is our enter button, would want to go to the main menu, and that's at frame 10, right? So we need to go back to our code, and we need to type in 10, okay? So best thing to do is save, is to test often. And so test remembers command return, and then we want to make sure this works. Bingo, perfect. Okay, I always test as soon as I put in some code. I test it right away just to make sure everything's working. Okay, so when we're on this frame, which is our main menu, same thing here. Let's just get rid of that for a moment. And you can close this stuff up, by the way. So if you want to just, close up all the commenting, you can do that by just clicking on that little plus sign right there, okay? And that kind of cleans up your code a little bit. So this button here needs to go to frame 20, right? And this button needs to go to frame 30, and so on, right? So we'll also see that on page 1, frame 20, we have an audio track right here, okay? And the audio track, when you drag audio, you go to your library and you find your audio track, and you simply drag the audio right to the stage. Making sure that your audio frame is selected when you do that. You'll notice it'll pop into the timeline as a waveform, and then you can check a few things. So it tells you what it's called, and then it tells us what kind of sync we want. So we want this to start, and we want it to loop, okay? So what will happen then is that when we get to page 1, frame 20, then the music will start playing. Okay, so let's see if that works. So here we are with our button. We will get to our actions, and we have a stop action already. I'm going to just close that comment up. And then on page 1, I select my button. I go to my code snippets. Same thing. I want to go to a frame and I want it to stop. Okay, so double click on that. It needs a symbol instance, right? Everything should have an instance name. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to go to my properties and make sure my button is selected. And I'm going to just call this page 1 button. Page 1 but. I never use spaces when I'm naming either instances or symbol names. And in general, it won't take spaces here anyways. And also in my labels, I never use spaces. So it's a good habit just to not use spaces, okay? So now we're back to our code snippets. We have our page 1 instance named, and now we can double click to add the code. Okay, so now here's our code right here. It wants us to tell it where to go, right? So we're on the main menu. We want this to go to frame 20 right there. And so now we just type in 20. All right. So now, again, we'll want to test this, right? So I probably want to save it right now just because. And then hit our page 1. Okay, cool. Music plays. Okay, we don't have that main menu button selected yet, do we? Right? Here's that main menu button, and that needs to go back to our main menu. And so we need to do something here, right? So right now we have a stop action, perfect. And so now we'll select the main menu. We'll go to our code snippets, same thing, go to frame and stop. Oh, we need to put an instance name, don't we? So here we'll go main but. And then we'll go back to our code snippets and we'll double click on that. Now it's asking us to go back to frame 10, okay? So now we go back to frame 10, and that takes us back to the main menu, okay? So let's test this to see if it works, all right? So now we're in the main menu. We go to page 1, music plays, but we go back to the main menu and the music keeps playing, right? We don't want that to happen, right? So we have to do something else. So here we are on frame 20, and we want the music to stop when we leave the frame. So we go to the code snippets, and instead of timeline navigation, we go to audio and video. And we say click to stop all sounds, okay? So when we click on that, it says, oh, gotta have an instance, right? Oh, didn't select the button. Oops, right? Okay, bad, Jeff. Make sure your button is selected and you click to stop all sounds. Now, look where this goes. This is a very simple piece of code. It doesn't require any alterations. All it's saying is when the button is clicked, stop everything that's playing. Now, the important thing to understand about this is that this particular piece of code will function fine where it's at, but the problem is that it will stop all the sounds even if we go to another page that has sounds. And the reason why is because this little bit of code right here is running after the mouse is clicked. And so if the mouse is clicked, it goes to frame 10, but this code is still going to run. So that's a problem. What you need to do then is you need to copy the code, actually cut it, Command X, right? Cut it. And let's open up everything so we can see what your code would look like. Here's our stop sound, and here's the comment for our button. So what we do is after the stop action, put in a couple of returns, and then we'll paste that code in. And what'll happen then is that, I'm going to close up my comments now to kind of clean things up a little bit. And what happens now is that the playback head stops. We click the button, it stops the sounds, and then it goes to where we told it to go. Okay, so that's important. Okay, so now when we test our movie, our enter button goes to where it's supposed to go. Our page 1 goes to page 1. The music plays, main menu, sound stops. So it's a really good idea, just in general, to, if you're going to stop sounds, put that right after the stop button, because you may have here 3 buttons or 5 buttons or whatever on a given page, and what'll happen is that each one of these buttons is going to go someplace, and each one of those buttons would have to have a stop sound, right? Because say we had music playing here, you'd have to add a stop sound to everything, right? And so you put all those stop sounds, you add the stop sound, then you cut it from where it's at and just paste all your stop sounds right after the stop code there, okay? And you'll need to do that with video too, because the video will keep playing, or the audio in the video will keep playing, I should say, even when you leave the screen. And so make sure that you add that stop sound to the video files as well. So that's the basic overview of the project as it stands at this moment, okay?